Now, I'm going to talk to you about fasting, prayer, and I'm going to talk to you about giving, the three pieces there. But I'm going to put a lot of emphasis, of course, on fasting because that's where we're getting ready to go. But I also want to make it relative to right now where we're standing and the recent shakings that are going on. In Matthew 6, chapter 1, and chapter 6, verse 1, and it says, "Take heed that you do not do your charitable deeds before men to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward from your Father in heaven. Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly." All right, now that's one piece of this, okay? And that's a model piece of the whole of this, and it has to do with giving, of course. We're talking about alms and that kind of thing. Verse 5. Now when you pray, so we're going to go from giving to prayer. And I'll just say this about giving because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on giving. I believe with all my heart giving is so much of a direct reflection to the evidence of you really being saved versus not being saved. When you're not a giver, I have great confidence in the fact you've never met Jesus. Because God so loved the world that he gave. His nature is giving. And if you meet God and let God in your life, you've taken on the nature of God. And to not give is to deny your own natural nature. Hello. If I started living in trees and eating bananas, you would say, well, I was imitating a monkey. What I would be doing is living opposite of what my human nature demands of me. But if I come to the house of God or am involved in what God is doing and I meet God and I let God in my life, I am taking on the nature of God and his likeness. So I will do things that are God-like. If I forgive, it is based on the fact that I was forgiven. So then I know that that's the nature of God. If I love, my love is not like is earthly and it's not like God's, but if I love in God, then I have the ability to love like God. Hello? So the Bible tells us there in that portion that that's one aspect of this thing of giving. Now, the prayer part, when you pray, verse 5, you shall not be like the hypocrites. And Jesus was really putting some emphasis on not being like the world or those that say things that don't really do them. That's what a hypocrite is. For they love to pray standing in the synagogue and on the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. And assuredly I say to you, they have their reward. The third area is in verse 16. We've covered one, we covered giving, we covered prayer. Now we're going to cover fasting. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites. There it is again. Okay? With a sad countenance. Oh, that's so just rubs me like a chalkboard fingernail. When I see people come up and the first thing out of their mouth is, I'm fasting. And it's like, come on. If you got to tell somebody that, it ain't working. And they come up with a sad face and they look at food and say, I can't eat. But you can tell they're lusting after it. When I find somebody like that, I don't even like chocolate sundaes. I'll order something slippery like that. For they disfigure their faces that they may appear to be men to be fasting. Now these three verses here, or sections here in the book of Matthew, give us some real insight to the heart of the Father. The Father is always in a secret place to be found by those that go there. He is always a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. And if you know that, then you know the life of a Christian is one that is done in the view of God before it is in the public of people. Hello. Do you know that angels stand ready to transport God's mercy as well as his judgment in the earth? And he's waiting, the angels are waiting to transport what is supposed to be given out. You and I, by the edict of God, by the mandate of God, you have the ability to move angels and dispatch them on behalf of the glory of God. And if you don't know that, your prayers are so low-leveled prayers. You're praying about, this boo-boo and that, and you pray about you need the parking space, and you pray about all the stupid things. But when you really understand prayer, prayer is a design that God orchestrated that you can cause angels to be dispatched to do the functionings of God because of your prayers. You move them. You move angels. Wow. The key that releases them to act is the prayer of spirit-filled believers, of born-again believers. You actually move the heavens. Going to take you a little further here. How many of you know prayer is an important thing? We need to hear this. Now, the threefold cord of this story that I read to you out of Matthew is so important that we don't want to miss it. We emphasize giving, and rightly so. We live by prayer, whether we're saint or sinner, but fasting is so serious, the desperate thing that we need to learn how to do. We need to learn how to be desperate enough to fast. The committed people are ones that fast. And because it humbles us, it empties us, it opens us to the spiritual side of Christianity like nothing else will. When you begin to fast, now we've covered the prayer, we covered the finance piece a little bit here, but I want to stick into the fast part here now for the end. And I want you to catch this. Remember what I said to you, shaking is from the Lord. And fasting shakes things. Okay? Now, we need to know that fasting humbles us. Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17. Would you turn there? Matthew 17. Come on. Are you still here? How many of you are listening today? How many of you understand that there's a whole lot more of Christianity than you allow yourself to know? Some of you live on a banana peeling life. You live on the very edge of falling away every day. Why not get on the inside and live with all your heart after the Lord? Why live on the edge of falling away from God when you can live on the center of God's will and be in God every day and be involved in God? And then when things begin to shake, you won't be one of those that has to run for somebody to help. You'll be those running to help people. Matthew 17, verse 14. This is a great story. This is the story that I have used before in this illustration. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers severely, for he often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Well, that sounds like the church. And then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him. And the child was cured that very hour. How many of you hear that? I mean, that's an absolute, deal with it right now thing. And so Jesus, verse 20, said to them, boy, is that important. Because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. And nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting. How many of you get it? Come on, how many of you get it? Jesus looks at this thing. He rebukes these people. He tells them they don't have any faith. He deals with this thing and says that you need to understand it's your unbelief. And then he says, if you had faith as a mustard seed, you'd say to the mountain. The mountain is not a physical mountain. The mountain is authority. You could say to any authority, move, and it has to move. You say to the demonic world, move, and it has to move. But they didn't exercise that faith, okay? And what happens is this kind of demon possession, or this kind of stronghold that was held this boy captive as a lunatic all these days, this kind come out but by prayer and fasting. Isaiah 58:8, and says, this is the fast that he chose. That your light shall break forth like the morning, and your healing shall spring forth speedily. I want to tell you something. The church should be the one with the answers. I've said this recently, and we have not been. But God's going to change that. I know Christians right now that are moving there by masses. I have a friend that moves 400 containers of relief to cities and nations every year. He's already switched everything, and they're already in gear, starting to move supplies and relief into those nations. That's because the Christian community should be the ones that stand toe to toe with these nations and be the ones that bring deliverance and bring answers. Instead, we come to church and all we want to do is beg, 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 ask for blessing, 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 when we should become those that are outside in the marketplace, living the kingdom lifestyle till we rebuild the church in such a way that when a tragedy happens, the church is the first one there.